that's pretty much all the free agency moves I wanted to talk about. So let's get into the second thing I want to talk about this season, the UFL's rules. So the first rule in the UFL this season I want to talk about is the PAT rules. If you are unaware, they have taken the XFL PAT rules from last season, and they will be using the XFL this season. If you don't know, you can go for a 1-point conversion after you score a touchdown from the 2-yard line, a 2-point conversion from the 5-yard line, or a 3-point conversion from the 10-yard line. And you can run any play you want. It's just like a conversion in the actual NFL, but, from different yards and for different amounts of points and stuff. Yeah, now, personally, I'm not a big fan of the XFL's PAT rules. I would have much preferred the USFL's PAT rules because, well, I briefly talked about it with talking about destroying earlier, but we can't really get kickers taped that much if we just don't let them kick extra points. Like, we saw Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys this NFL season. He played in the USFL for the Stallions, and even as an Eagles fan, Brandon Aubrey was a really good kicker. So, we don't really know. Kickers are not going to have nearly as many opportunities to show how good they are at kicking if they don't ever have to kick extra points. Like, in the XFL last year, I'm a Defenders fan. I couldn't even tell you who our kicker was last year. 1, because our offense was really good and we scored a lot of touchdowns. And 2, there was no extra points. So even when we did score touchdowns, I still had no idea who our kicker was because we never really saw our kicker that much. So, personally, I think they should have stuck with the USFL PAT rules, which were literally just the NFL PAT rules, plus the 3-point conversion try if you wanted to do it. I think those were better because, yeah, with these rules, kickers can't show how good they are nearly as often. So that's my take on the PAT rules for the UFL. Not a fan. The next rule I want to talk about is the kickoffs, and the UFL kickoffs will be taking the USFL kickoff format instead of the safety-first XFL kickoffs we had beforehand in 2020 and 2023. Personally, I preferred the USFL kickoff just because, kind of like the same thing with the PAT rules, it's more similar to the NFL's kickoffs, right? So if we want to get tape for these people, try and get them their second chance in the NFL, or just a chance in the NFL at all, I feel like we don't want the exact same rules as the NFL, because, some of the NFL rules just aren't very good, honestly. But, we don't want to change stuff too drastically that isn't exactly wrong. So, we can get more, tape of a returner, for example, if they actually have to return the ball. Unlike NFL kickoff rules, where, just goes in just in a touchback 90% of the time. And, XFL kickoff rules, well, yeah, they're good at returning kicks with the XFL format, but the NFL doesn't use the XFL format. So, despite it being slightly less safe, I do kind of prefer them using the USFL kickoff format. So, yeah, Kevontae Turpin, really good return man. Same with Maurice Alexander, if we're using the 2022 USFL returners, for example. They're both in the NFL now. Maurice Alexander on the Lions and Kevontae Turpin on the Cowboys. Kevontae Turpin's made more of an impact for his team than Maurice Alexander on the Lions. But they both are examples of the USFL kickoff and the returnman. That tape can actually help you get in the league. So that's my take on the kickoff rule. Next thing I want to talk about, the punting rules, because I'm not really a fan of the punting rules. So let's say you're a punter in the UFL. Well, actually, no. We'll start with you're a punter in the NFL. You're at the 50-yard line. You punt the ball. It's a bomb. Straight to the corner. Goes out the 1-yard line at the corner. Other team gets the ball at the 1-yard line. You're a hero. You're getting hyped up walking back to the sideline. Now, you do that same thing in the UFL. Any kick that goes behind the the returning team's 25-yard line and goes out of bounds, they will instead treat it like a touchback, and they will get the ball at the 25-yard line. I don't see what the point of that is. I mean, I guess it's a more entertaining product for the people watching, because, the offense gets the ball further down the field, resulting in, more scoring, usually. But, now you're just, the punters themselves are now getting punished for something that would be celebrated in the NFL. That's a good NFL play if they manage to hit a quarter coffin punt to the 1-yard line out of bounds. But in the UFL, they're going to punish you for doing that and instead make you punt it directly to the returner, but giving them a chance to return the ball. Which, I guess, I was just talking about how returns like that can get the returners more tape, but like you still want to do that without actively punishing one side of the ball for something that wouldn't be punished in the NFL. That's one of the few areas where I think just using the NFL rule would just be better, because one, the returner, when the ball is punted to them with the NFL rules, they can do a fair catch, they can return it, do whatever they want. And the punter still has the freedom of where they are on the field to go for pinning them down deep in their own territory with a corner coffin punt, and they won't be punished for it. So, personally, not a big fan of the punting rules for the UFL this season. Next up, we have the alternative option for the onside kick in the fourth quarter. But to my knowledge, this was in both the USFL and XFL. And, so reading directly from the fine print, while onside kicks are allowed at any time during the game, teams will have an alternate option to retain possession in the fourth quarter. If a team is tied or behind during the fourth quarter, they may elect to retain possession after a score with a 4th and 12 try from their own 28-yard line. I really like that rule because, well, the onside kick, while pulling off a successful onside kick is a very memorable moment. Like, it's a great moment for everyone involved. It happens so little of the time that people just expect it to not work. So, I feel like having an alternate option that is still pretty hard. You gotta get 13 yards, 12 yards minimum, if you want to convert it. There's still a high enough chance for that happening where, like, you could keep interest in games. Go back to that San Antonio-St. Louis game from the XFL last year. Kind of like that. Like, if that was an NFL game, no one would have expected St. Louis to come back and win that with the time they had left on the clock, just because the onside kick doesn't work so much of the time that, like, most people would just tune out. With the 4th and 12 rule, St. Louis got it, ended up going down the field again and scoring another touchdown to win the game. It creates a lot more excitement for the viewers. So, that's one of the areas where I think the excitement for the viewers should be kept. Now, because that doesn't equally punish either side. Because the defense still has an equal opportunity to make a stop. Unlike the punting rule, where a punter is kind of just forced to punt it directly to the returner, and they can't really go for a, effective corner coffin punt. Like, here, it's not really actively punishing one side for something that they can't really control. So, I'm still a pretty big fan. I always have been, of the 4th and 12 rule. Now, a common theme of spring leagues is having a 2 forward pass rule. That's been a thing in almost every spring league I can remember. So, I mean, it doesn't get used too much, but we still have 2 forward passes are allowed if they're both performed behind the line of scrimmage. I think it's cool. Doesn't actually happen that much, but it's still a cool rule, personally. When it does happen, it usually looks pretty cool. So, I'm for it, but don't expect it to actually take place too much. Next thing, we have the what is a catch in the UFL. Now, this is notable because the USFL, you only need 1 foot in for a catch to count. The XFL, like the NFL, you need 2 foot in for a catch to count. So, the UFL is going to be going with 2 feet for a catch to count. And I feel like that's better because it's closer to the NFL rule. So, an NFL scout, they see a USFL wide receiver's highlight tape, and like half of their best catches only had 1 feet in. They're probably not going to look at that and be like, that seems like a guy we should sign, because half those catches wouldn't even have counted in the NFL. XFL receiver highlight tape, they're actually, all of their best catches, they're going to have 2 feet in, so they'd probably want someone like that over someone in the USFL who, a lot of their best plays were only 1 foot in catches. So, personally, I feel like it's a good move by the league to use the 2 feet in rule instead of the 1 feet in rule. Some might say it's less entertaining, but I understand increasing the entertainment value in some parts, but not every part, because, the goal at the end of the day, we gotta remember, is to get these players back in the NFL. This is supposed to be more of a developmental league, so I think it's a pretty good move to make it a 2 feet in bounds catch rule, regulation, whatever you want to call it. This is more of a smaller one, but I just want to bring it up. Challenges in the UFL. I think it's weird, because you only get 1 challenge per game, which is a little weird, because if your challenge is successful, in the NFL, you would get a second challenge, and that was the same for the USFL, but in the UFL, you challenge a play result, your challenge is successful, you still don't get a second challenge. The only thing you gain is whatever you challenged being overturned, and also, you don't lose a timeout. If the challenge is unsuccessful, your thing is not overturned, and you lose a timeout. But even if your challenge is successful, you still don't get another challenge for the entire rest of the game, which I feel like you should get another challenge. Because, well, that's a little too punishing for something that shouldn't even be punishing. Like, your successful challenge also somehow punishes you for future challenges. So, I don't really like that rule that much, but I just think it's a little weird. But it's not like that big of a deal. Now, UFL overtime is going to be rather similar to USFL overtime, in which both teams will have 3 tries to score from their opponent's 5-yard lines, and they have 1 play to score. And they will alternate every time until either A, someone wins the best out of 3, or B, they both score on the same amount of best out of 3 plays. They keep going until someone fails to score. So, I rather like this overtime format. I like this overtime format better than the actual NFL overtime format, because the NFL overtime format, I guess you could say it's fairer, but it is rather long and drawn out and can be quite confusing at sometimes for people who don't pay attention to the NFL as much as other people do. So, I always liked the USFL overtime format because it's quick, simple, fair, and, it's rather easy to understand. So I like they're bringing that back, personally.